is Jenna and today I'm here doing my April and May wrap up for this year. Obviously I did not get an April wrap up for you guys. I don't even remember why. I just think April and May were kind of a mess for basically the entire world, so I'm unsurprised I was unable to get a video up. So I have a lot of books to talk about. I read 8 books in April and 6 books in May, and I got into a bit of a reading slump by the end of it, and I'm still kind of in a reading slump now, so that sort of sucks. But in April I participated in the Hours Readathon, so I don't think all of the books are Hours books, but some of them definitely are. And then in May, obviously, it was the Because We Can Readathon, which is a readathon that I hosted with Kat from Stars and Embers and Kat from Brews and Reviews. There will be links in the description box below for all of that if you want to go and check us out. So I have reading vlogs up, well, I have a reading vlog up for the Because We Can Readathon, and I have a reading vlog that I've filmed for the Hours Readathon that I still need to edit and put that one up. So I'm not going to talk too much in detail about a lot of these books because I did sort of talk about them in the reading vlog, and also especially for the ones in April, like it's been so long I cannot remember if I liked them or not, but we're just gonna get started. So the first book that I read in April was one that I did on audiobook, and that was The Thief by Megan Wallen Turner. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. This is one of those weird books that I got from my library because they didn't have many audiobooks available, and this one just happened to be there for me to borrow. And this is one of those weird books, I'm not even entirely sure what it's about. It's about this guy who is known as being the world's greatest thief, and so he is recruited to go and steal this thing to fulfill this maybe prophecy, and it involved a prince and a queen, and it was very typical 90s fiction, and turns out it was YA. I didn't think it was, but it is. And I just spent the whole time just wanting like the main character and this other guy to get together, and I just wanted them to be the cutest little couple, but that never happened, and I'm struggling to remember what actually did happen in the book, so I don't think I'm going to continue on with this series, but it's just one of those random ones that I found that I thought I'd give a go. The second book I finished was another audiobook. That one was An Acceptable Time by Madeline Liengle. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I have now finished the Wrinkle in Time Quintet. I'm very proud of myself for that, but this one in particular I kind of struggled with because it followed Polly. So Polly O'Keefe, she is the daughter of Meg and, it's not Charles Wallace, that's the kid. What is his name? He's in Wrinkle in Time? I have no idea. So it followed her, and it followed her like going back in time, and I struggled. I really struggled. I stand corrected. I read 7 novels in May. Forgot about that last one. Anyway, okay, so this one was definitely my least favorite in all 5 books because I didn't feel like I knew Polly or Zachary enough. I didn't read there's a series of 4 books I think that follow them, and I didn't read those because supposedly you should be able to just go straight into this one. Didn't love it. Did love that we could see Mr. and Mrs. Murray again. That was really nice, but the whole idea of the story just didn't work for me. The next book that I read was one that I did actually read for the Hours Readathon, and that was Ballad by Jodie McAllister. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. Not sure why it's taken me so long to read it. I've had this on my shelf for like a good 3 years, and I finally decided to pick it up, and it was so good, you guys. It was all about murder fairies, and like who doesn't like reading about fairies who murder people, and they just straight up murder. Like it's not even fun, it's just they kill these people, and they don't just kill them, they really kill them. And I mean, it was a little predictable at times. I did sort of guess the big plot twist that was coming, but it was still so good. I loved every single one of the characters. I thought they were all so well fleshed out and so great. Plus, it's an Aussie YA urban fantasy, and it felt like an Aussie YA urban fantasy. There were so many like Aussieisms in this book. I loved it. If you haven't read it, please do because it's fantastic. Murder fairies. Just murder fairies. Next up, I read The Witch's Kiss by Catherine and Elizabeth Kaur. I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars. I found this one to be really dull, uninspired, a really predictable plot, and just I felt like I'd read this 1,000 times before. I kept waiting for something to happen, and then it never really did. Like literally the majority of this book is just the main character and her brother sitting by a lake waiting for things to happen, and because of that it was really dull. Like who wants to read about 2 characters just sitting next to a lake waiting for something to happen? Cut out the waiting and just show us the thing that happened. It wasn't great, so I don't think I'm going to continue on with this series because I just was not invested enough in any part of it. Next up was The Drop Off by Fiona Harris and Mike McLeish. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. There is actually a full book review up of this one on my channel, so I will leave a link to that one in the description box below if you want to know more of my thoughts. Next up was Monuments by Will Kostakis. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't mind this one, but it felt very meh to me. I didn't feel like we really got connected to any of the characters, and the plot was moving so fast that I sort of feel like I never got a chance to focus on anything before I was immediately thrown into the next thing. So everything just sort of happened very fast, and then the big ending happened very very quickly, and it came off as a bit meh to me. It sort of came off as kind of half finished. So I will probably continue on with this series because there's only one more book to go, and I didn't actively hate it. So I am curious to sort of know how it goes in the second one, but I wasn't the biggest fan. Next up was the YA Circles Book Club Book of the Month for April, and that was The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. This one was a contemporary novel, so it sort of had a lot to live up to in my mind for whether or not I would actually like it. And I didn't mind this novel. I liked everything about it, except for the main romance. The book could have taken out the main romance and I would have absolutely loved it. Honestly, I found the romance to be completely pointless and just not necessary. But the rest of the book was so fascinating to see how journalism was used and to see the space race and everything. It was just, romance bugged me a lot. And then the last book for April was Quidditch Through the Ages by J.K. Rowling. I listened to this one on audiobook and gave it 5 out of 5 stars. If you haven't ever listened to the audiobook of this one, I would actually highly recommend it. So the audiobook had a lot of sound effects and sort of really fun stuff, but the really cool thing was at the very end of the audiobook, for about an hour, they have narrated and put onto audio all of the 2014 Quidditch World Cup articles that J.K. Rowling wrote for Pottermore. So you sort of get to hear Ginny mostly, it's not Bonnie Wright, it's someone else, but you get to hear her as Ginny, as being so much older. She is sort of writing, like reading out her articles that she wrote during that time, so you get to hear about all the different teams that are competing, and then during the final we actually get Ginny and Rita Skeeter. They are commentating and it's really funny. So I actually really loved that aspect of it, and I would highly recommend the audiobook if you haven't ever listened to this one. And so there we go, those are all of the books that I read in April, and so now I want to talk about the books that I read in May. So first up we have The Wren Hunt by Mary Watson. I listened to this one on audiobook and gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't love this book. I think I finished it on audiobook. So I did physical and audio, and I didn't love it. It gave me creepy paganism vibes, which I have since learned from a friend that it's not actual paganism. Paganism is actually meant to be really sweet and nurturing and like really focus on the environment with less of the human sacrifice sort of thing, but that's not what I got from this book. So this book definitely focused more on the creepy Hollywood skewed version of it, and I didn't love the characters, I didn't love the setting, I didn't love anything about it, but I did like that the narrator for the audiobook was Irish, although it did make it kind of hard to understand what she was saying some of the times, but I just was not the biggest fan, I have to admit. Then moving on to the Because We Can Readathon reads, the first one was Alice by Christina Henry. I gave this only 5 out of 5 stars. This was a creepy, murderous horror version of Alice in Wonderland, and it was fantastic. One of the most disturbing books I have read in a really long time, but I loved it. I loved all the murder and the mutilation and just everything about it. It was so dark, so twisted, and it was just a really different but refreshing take on a story that I know inside now. Then next up was The First Third by Will Kostakis. I give this only 3 out of 5 stars. I did enjoy this book. It was, again, a contemporary, so it had a lot to live up to, but I feel like I would have enjoyed it more if I was Greek. I feel like I would have understood a lot more of the in-jokes and everything that was going on with his family, because I don't have a family like that at all, so I couldn't really relate to anything that was going on in the book, but it was still an enjoyable read and I didn't absolutely hate it. Next up was Frostblood by Ellie Blake. I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. This was one of the most stereotypical YA fantasies I have read in a really long time. It was during that, I think it was the 2016 release period, where every single YA fantasy book that was coming out at the time were all basically exactly the same thing. So even though this had kind of a unique-ish ideal, it just wasn't, and it just felt like every other YA novel I'd ever read. It did have one opportunity right towards the end of the book where I thought maybe it was going to go a different way and completely flip my expectations and make me utterly love it, but it didn't. It just went in the real stereotypical safe way, and I went, well, you had an opportunity to make it really different and unique and you butchered it. So next up was The Wicca Light by Mary Watson. This was the sequel to The Wren Hunt, and I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Again, I sort of half audioed it, half physical read it, and the audiobook was really tricky for this one. It took me a very long time, as in it took me a good hour or two to figure out that we were reading from 2 different points of view. Once I figured that out, everything started to make a hell of a lot more sense. I must admit, was very confused. The one thing I will say about the audiobooks for these ones is because it is so rooted in Irish culture, some of the names names of people, of places, of things I never would have been able to pronounce properly if not for listening to them on the audiobook. So I am really glad I did that. I liked this book mildly more than the first one. It's more of a companion novel, so it focuses on a different set of characters, but I still didn't love it. I just don't think I connected very well with this world and this magic system and how everything sort of fit together, but I did enjoy it fractionally more than the first one. The sixth book that I read this month was one of my most anticipated reads of 2020. It's probably one that a lot of people are expecting to be on this list, and that is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I'm planning on doing a full book talk on this one coming soon-ish, so look out for that. But basically, I found it to be a really interesting and unique character study. There's not a lot of action going on in this book, but it's definitely interesting to see how Panem was directly after the rebellion versus the Panem that we see in Katniss's time. It was also really interesting to read from Snow's point of view because I personally, throughout the whole book, didn't sympathize with him at all. I didn't sympathize with his situation, what he was going through. He was still a bad guy, and you could see the calculated decisions that he was making, and you could see how he becomes the person that we know in Katniss's book. So I really, really enjoyed this one. And then the last book that I read was the YA Circles Book Club Book of the Month for May, and that was Deep Water by Sarah Epstein. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars, but it would be closer to a 3.5-ish. I enjoyed this one to a certain point, but I found it to be relatively predictable for a thriller, which is very irritating. For mystery thrillers, you don't want them to be too predictable. You want to keep your audience guessing, and I was not guessing because I pretty much figured it out very, very quickly. I didn't love the characters, but I don't think you're supposed to like the characters in this book. They're all very unreliable narrators, and you're sort of only getting bits and pieces of the story, and they're all making such stupid decisions that I don't think you're supposed to like anybody, but it's still irritating. And the mystery itself was not a mystery. I figured it out very quickly, but what bugged me the most were all the red herrings that weren't really red herrings. Like, they were there and you could see the intention of making them red herrings. It was just never really followed through on, so that definitely bugged me. But I did really like the small town Aussie setting. I never lived in a small town, but I know friends who have, and I have visited them quite a bit, so I liked that aspect of it, but the rest of it was a bit eh. And there you go, that is all of the books that I read in April and May for this year. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below what you read during this period and if you have read any of these books, because I would absolutely love to know. If you like this video, be sure to give it a huge thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. Stay random! Bye!